Welcome back. My name is Chris, and in this video, we're going to be taking a look at the subject of goods movements in SAP's S/4HANA system. Now, the name is pretty self-explanatory. We're talking about how goods can be moved around in the organization, including how it comes into the organization, where it can go, how it can move out. And as you're going to see in a second, there are a lot of different ways that you can move goods. And while I will be showing you a few examples of that actually in the system, before we dive into S/4HANA itself, I think it's important to just get a general understanding of some of the more common movements that can occur. So with that in mind, let's jump to a graphic now. And to start off, we're going to have a plant. Now, keep in mind the definition of a plant in S/4HANA. It's not smokestacks manufacturing something, although it can do that. It can also, and is very commonly, just a warehouse or maybe a series of warehouses in one particular location. And within that plant, we do have storage locations, which is going to be represented on this grid as S-locks. So storage location 1, storage location 2. Often as I go through this graphic, I'm just going to be referring to things as, it comes to the plant, but in reality, keep in mind, it will be going to a specific storage location in all instances. So with that in mind, let's take a look at some of the common goods movements. So we can have our plant, and let's add a vendor up on top. And obviously we can have our vendors sending us some kind of goods. Let's say it's a widget. So we can have a goods receipt of those widgets. And then of course, let's say there's a circumstance where the widgets are defective or we didn't order the widgets in the first place. We can of course return things to our vendor. And on the flip side, that's on procurement. What about on the sales? So let's add a separate plant, and let's say this plant is supplying our customer. So in that instance, we have a goods issue of widgets from our plant to our customer. And then again, the customer may have a reason why they want to return the widgets back to us. So we can have that flow. And we can also have an instance where, let's say we're doing the manufacturing process. So we have a separate factory, and we can have our plant do a goods issue for production to our factory. Now the factory, you got to keep in mind, the factory could be part of the plant. It might be a separate plant. The point I'm trying to make here is that there's a production facility, and you're going to have something come out of what is really your storage location and get issued to your production facility. And then of course, let's say we're giving raw materials and then we're getting widgets out of the production process, we would then have a goods receipt from production coming back from our factory. We can also have a plant-to-plant goods transfer. So that would be a stock transfer plant-to-plant. And we can have a stock transfer from storage location to storage location within one plant. So I'm going to draw a little line over from S-lock 1 to S-lock 2. Those might be two different rooms. Those might be two different warehouses all on the same street. Totally depends. We can also have things that are not necessarily going to a particular person or back from someone. We have a number of circumstances such as we may want to scrap various goods. They've gone bad, whatever the reason is. We can have our plant do a goods issue to scrap. So that would be going down to scrap. We can also have an instance where it's going to get used up as part of just normal administrative procedures. So we want to attribute goods that we previously had in storage. We want to basically have them get attributed to a particular cost center or department. So that would be issuing or GI to cost center. That might be, let's say, reams of paper that get used up as part of our office's administrative duties. Well, those reams of papers no longer exist. We need to attribute the value of those to that particular cost center. And then we may have a circumstance where goods have to go through some sort of quality inspection. So we would have a stock transfer to QI and then a stock transfer back from QI to whatever storage location it came from. So those are just some examples of common goods movements that can happen in the S/4HANA system. And frankly, when it comes to all of these different goods movements, they're either ones that I've described in my sales and distribution course, they're ones that I've described in the material management course course or the sourcing and procurement course that I just released, or a couple of them I'll be describing in a WM or warehouse management course that I will be coming out with shortly. But most of these things I actually explain, not necessarily all on YouTube, but in one or more of my courses. So if you're interested in diving into them deeper, you can check those out. But for now, let's actually jump into the S/4HANA system and take a look at a couple common examples of goods movements and how you would execute those. All right, so here we are in the system. Now there are a few ways that you can handle goods movements. There's a number of different apps that can be utilized. For example, if I come over here and just search stock and type that in, you can see a lot of different apps come up. So just to give you a couple examples, we have over here stock multiple materials and stock single material. Both of these apps can use not only to get some analytical information about what's happening with your goods at various plants, both for a particular material and for many materials, but within those apps, you have the ability to transfer between, for example, plants, between storage locations, and that specific function of transferring plant to plant or S-lock to S-lock can also be used by going straight to these apps. Transfer stock in plant, which is storage location to location, or cross plant between plants. So these functions are contained within those other two apps, along with many other things. So you can utilize any one of these apps that you see here, but the king of goods movement apps, by far the most used and the best because it's very robust and it can do so many different things, as I'm about to show you, is the Post Goods Movement app. Post Goods Movement. This app is also known by its code as MIGO or MIGO. If you type in MIGO, as long as you have the authorization to actually utilize that app, it will also appear. So if we come to Post Goods Movement, now when you first come to this app, there's kind of a lot going on. It can be a little bit disorienting. So let's try to break this down for a second here. This app, first off, again, it can do many different things. So you kind of have to tell it, what are we doing? So first things first, this bar that we have at the top here, this is critically important because this is going to dictate what we can do down below. So first things first, we have this field. A01, you can see you've got like goods receipts, return deliveries. Common is goods receipts, displays, goods issues, and transfers. Those are all very commonly utilized. And this is kind of what I would consider broad strokes movement direction. So are we receiving something? Good, that's gonna go under A1. Are we sending something out? That's gonna be A7. Are we transferring something within? So to our production facility, to our quality, that's gonna all fall under A8, which is transfer postings. So in this particular case, let's start off with goods receipt. And once we've selected goods receipt, we now need to get a little bit more specific of what are we receiving and what's happening there. And to do that, we actually come over on the right here. We have this, what's called a movement type. And it's a code, so we put in 101, that's very common. That is a goods receipt from a vendor from a purchase order. And you can see it even tells you what this 101 is representing, which is a GR, aka goods receipt. And I'll just open this up for a second. Just to give you a concept of how many of these codes there is an enormous number. Now there's several that just get used very commonly, and you'll start to get familiar with those codes, like a 101, a 122, a 551. You'll see these things quite a bit. But if I scroll, you just get a concept of the vast array all the way into the 500s, it goes on and on. So there's a lot of different movement types, and you have to pick the one that's gonna be right for your particular circumstances. So in this particular case, if I wanted to receive, I'd put in a purchase order and I wanted to actually receive the goods from our vendor, I would go A1, I would pick a 101 movement type, and then I would specify here, okay, well, what are we specifically receiving from? And a purchase order is, in the vast majority of cases, what you're going to be utilizing. But as you can see, we've got a number of other options here. So I could select something else if it was relevant. In fact, in a later example, I am going to show you a different one. But let's assume for the sake of this that we did put in a purchase order with our vendor and we now wanted to actually receive the, let's say, rubber soles that we ordered from our vendor. So we put in purchase order here, and then this field is where we're actually going to input the PO number that we're receiving the goods from. So we had a PO for 100 rubber soles. We now want to say, great, that's the PO that we are receiving these 100 soles from. We put in that PO number as soon as we hit enter from that. Now, in this particular case, I don't have a PO that's already ready to go. I'm going to show you a different example of walking through an actual goods movement from a different circumstance. But if we were doing a goods receipt from a PO, I would put the PO number in here, I'd hit enter, and it would pull up everything that we're seeing down here. This would pull up what we know from that PO. So if it was for 100 rubber soles, it would say rubber soles, 100. It'd fill in all the information from that purchase order, and we'd then be able to go down into these tabs that you can see below here, where we can start influencing, okay, what do we want to do with this? How many rubber soles? You know, it was 100 on the PO, but maybe only 60 arrived on this shipment. What do we want to do about that? Where are we placing it exactly? All of that stuff. So that's one example that would be very common. Let's take another example here. Let's switch this from a goods receipt to a transfer posting, A8. And you can see here, as soon as I change it to transfer posting, it also changed this number, the movement type code on the right. It went with the last one that I've utilized. So it switched over to a 411, and it even has the additional kind of special assignment of K. And you can see here, well, what is this movement type doing? It is a transfer from consignment stock to our own stock within our storage location. Now, if that was the circumstance, then great, you can use that. That's actually not what I want to do in this particular case. I want to do a 311. So I'm going to delete that. I'm going to hit 311. And you can see now it says consignment in plant, but that's actually, the reason we're getting consignment is because of this K. So if I delete the K, we get what I'm actually trying to do, which is this transfer within plant. So if I want to do storage location to storage location, so warehouse 1, great. I want to take 100 rubber soles out of warehouse 1, move them over to warehouse 2. They're all in the same city block, so it's all within the same plant, but different storage locations. Then we can do a 311. If I want to do it from plant to plant, I would do a 301. That's another common one. So let's actually go through with this. Let's say it's a 311. Now over here, you can see this also changed. Originally it was on purchase order, but we're not doing this from a purchase order in this particular example. There's just, for whatever reason, I need to move those rubber soles over. So I'm doing R10 other, meaning I'm going to tell the system exactly what we're doing here. If I wanted to tie it to a particular material document or PO, I would have to click on that, and then I'd have to specify, well, what is that material document that I am connecting this goods movement to? But I don't want to do that. I want to do R10. So there's no field on the right here. I just have to input. I have to tell the system exactly what we're doing. So I'm going to come down here and I have to first tell it, well, what is the item or the material that we're dealing with? In this particular case, I already have my rubber sole good to go. So I'm going to put in the number for that. I select my rubber sole and I'm going to hit enter on that. So it fills in the information, and you can see it's now broken things into two different sides, right? We've got our from section over here, and we've got our destination section. So these are all within the same plant, but they're two different storage locations. So I need to first specify, well, what is the plant? And our plant in this case is called UNAB. So I'm going to select our UNAB plant. And the storage location is 0001. That's where I'm going to be taking the rubber soles from. And as soon as I hit enter on that, it's going to fill in. So this is our Under Armour, that's our company, and our UNAB plant, that's our Bangalore plant. So Under Armour Bangalore. And our storage location 0001 was raw materials. And we're going to be moving it to, within the UNAB plant, we're going to move it to 0002, which I believe is our finished goods, our finished materials storage location. So I've now specified what material we're moving, within what plant and what locations, but I also need to say what's the quantity that I'm moving. So I have to come over here to the quantity tab and I have to say, all right, well, what is the quantity? And let's just go with 50. So 50, and our rubber soles, the default units of measure is eaches, meaning each rubber sole. If you're dealing with liquids, you might have it in liters. If you're dealing with something that's in a weight or in a length, you might have a different unit of measure. But in this particular case, we're dealing with individual rubber soles. So I'm going to select 50, and that's all I need to do there. Now I do need to come down here and notice there's this option down here, item OK. In this particular case, it's defaulted to item OK, but you may have it where you have to come down here and manually select item OK for every single material that you are going to be doing, whether it's a goods receipt, a transfer, an issuance, doesn't matter. You have to make sure item OK is selected for every single line item. This particular case, we've got that selected, so everything's good to go. I'm going to simply scroll back up here, kind of look at my information again, make sure that everything is correct. Now, I do have other tabs. They're not essential. You can come into these tabs and put in additional information if it's relevant. In this particular case, I'm fine with what I have. I'm going to come over to this check button. I'll hit that. It's going to look at the information and make sure that I'm not missing something critical. There's no mandatory field like what storage location I'm going into that is missing. It lets me know down at the bottom here that the document is okay. There's no issues. So now I can come over here and I can hit post. And just like that, you can see material document. And I'm even going to copy this, and it's been posted. I could click on that. I could open up that material document if I want to, and I could see the fact that those rubber soles moved from one storage location to another, and it's like a teleportation. It's instant. It's not like we have to wait for the whole process. Now, if we want to have it where it actually has to be picked, packed, and shipped in storage location 1, has to be driven over to storage location 2 and properly received over there, we could do that as a different goods movement. In this particular case, that's not what we did. We just said it's disappeared at one location, appeared at the second location. So now we bring to another use of this post goods movement app. We can actually take a look at that material document right here on the app. So we can come over here, change it from A8, which is for transfers, to A4, which is for displays. And it defaults to material document, which is exactly what we want. And in this particular case, it's smart enough to figure out, hey, you just made this material document. That's probably what you want to take a look at. So it filled in that number. I could also just hit Control Paste because I had saved it earlier. I could paste in that material document. I hit Enter. And it's going to give me the exact information for that goods movement. So it says what material, where it came from, where it went, how much, all of that info, and as well as the date, all included right in here. So that's another very valuable use of this. Let's take a look at another example. We can come in here and we could go down to goods issue. Now, the first thing you might think of with a goods issue is we're going to be issuing something to our customer. And that, I would say, is arguably the most common issuance type, but there's a few other ones you can do. So we go to goods issue, and notice it defaulted to a goods issue for scrapping. I showed that on the earlier diagram. That's a 551. Another example, we could come over here and we could change this to a 201. And you can see here, that's a good issue to a cost center. So that's the other example I gave where, let's say we're using reams of paper. Great, those are gonna be used up. They need to be attributed from a cost standpoint and an accounting standpoint to a particular cost center. So let's just walk through a little bit of how that would work. Now, unlike a goods issue to a customer, where we would come in here, it selected R10 other. So in other words, we're going to put in the information. It's not connecting to a particular document. If we were doing a goods issue to a customer, we would most likely want to connect that to the initial sales order that sparked off that entire sale. So in this particular case, because we're doing a goods issue to cost center, we're going to scroll down here and you can see under here we have material. We need to specify, well, what are we issuing to a cost center? And I'm going to keep it with the same material, which is our rubber sole. So I'm going to put in our number for that. We select our rubber sole. I'm going to hit enter. Notice as soon as I did that, fills in a lot of information and it added an additional tab right here under account assignment. If I'm going to be doing an issuance to a cost center or even to scrapping, I would need to come in here and I need to specify, well, you can specify a GL account if you want to, which is a general ledger account, like it's going to affect this specific account. In many circumstances, you're not going to be putting in a specific GL account. You're just going to be delineating the cost center that it's going to. So in this case, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to put it to my cost center of 1,000. So you can see I've got that input, item is okay. And at this point, I could really just check the document and hit post and it would issue these rubber soles. Now, the one thing I would have to do, I did not specify the quantity yet. So I'd have to come in here, maybe I'm issuing 20 rubber soles to this cost center. Great, I didn't put it in here, hit post, and we would be good to go. All right, and that's a quick look at some of the commonly utilized goods movements, especially utilizing the post goods movement app. If you'd like to get more information on this subject as well as sourcing and procurement in general, you can check out my course. I'll have the link for it down below. This is the sourcing and procurement course, really diving into the material management module of S/4HANA. And overall, if you found this video helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this, and I hope to see you in the next video.